Ladies and gentlemen, we are compelled once again to direct our collective gaze toward the evolving narrative within the Women's National Basketball Association. For what unfolds before us is a situation of profound consequence, a dynamic tension so intrinsically laced with discord that it commands our focused and unwavering scrutiny. We find ourselves at a pivotal juncture where the foundational elements of professional sports, the players, the ownership, and the collective interest appear to be diverging into a chasm of escalating conflict. It is a fundamental truth, one that bears repeating with emphatic clarity, that a new collective bargaining agreement remains conspicuously absent. The athletes, it would appear, are resolute in their opposition to the financial and structural propositions currently advanced by the league's owners. This impasse, far from being a minor administrative hiccup, signals a deep-seated philosophical and economic divide. And within this crucible of contention, a radical yet increasingly compelling alternative vision emerges. Picture, if you will, a complete dismantling of the current edifice, a strategic reset that prioritizes the league's burgeoning potential over its historical entanglements. The proposition is stark. Embrace the transformative power of a select few, the undisputed luminaries who command unparalleled attention. Imagine assembling a new league built from the ground up, centered around figures such as Aja Wilson, Breanna Stewart, Sophie Cunningham, and of course, the singular phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark. These are the undeniable main attractions, the superstars capable of galvanizing an audience. Let us pay these exceptional talents handsomely, providing them with the financial recognition commensurate with their extraordinary impact, and in doing so, embark upon a fresh trajectory for women's professional basketball. This audacious strategy inherently necessitates a profound recalibration of the league's personnel. It calls for a definitive departure from the current landscape, a strategic severance from those players frequently characterized as the old guard, individuals perceived as steeped in bitterness and a sense of entitlement, holding the league hostage to an antiquated framework. The very notion is to shed the burden of legacy grievances and perceived historical slights. Should such a radical transformation materialize, the widespread public apprehension regarding a decline in competitive talent would, in all likelihood, prove to be a phantom concern. Indeed, the casual observer, the newly engaged fan, would scarcely register the difference. There would be no collective lamentation, no widespread outcry among viewers that the caliber of play had diminished. Quite the contrary. The prevailing sentiment would shift dramatically, fostering an environment of renewed enthusiasm and an absence of the perpetual lamentations that have, for too long, marred the league's public image. One could anticipate a season characterized by a refreshing calm, an absence of the incessant grievances, and the seemingly endemic complaining that has become a regrettable hallmark of past seasons. The imperative then becomes clear. Forge a new path with athletes who genuinely merit significant financial investment, individuals whose vision and commitment are aligned with the forward momentum of the league. Let Caitlin Clark receive the remuneration she unequivocally deserves. Let Aja Wilson be compensated in kind. Breanna Stewart, Sophie Cunningham, Angel Reese, these are the names that resonate, the talents that propel viewership and engagement. Empower them, elevate them. And as for the veterans, the old guard players whose perceived bitterness and resistance to progress have, in this analysis, become an impediment, let them recede into the background. Let them pursue their endeavors in alternative ventures, whether it be competing in leagues such as Unrivaled or participating in platforms like Project B. Their presence under this radical paradigm would simply no longer be accommodated within the re-envisioned WNBA. The league, revitalized and unburdened, would emerge stronger, prepared to even utilize replacement players in the interim, demonstrating an unyielding commitment to its future. The current situation, particularly in the context of player actions, presents a paradox of profound proportions. there is a palpable sense, a growing perception that certain elements within the player collective are, perhaps inadvertently, contributing to the potential undermining of their own professional enterprise. For years, there has been an ardent, persistent quest for mainstream recognition, a yearning for the broader cultural spotlight. Then, quite unequivocally, Caitlin Clark arrived. Her meteoric ascent and undeniable star power brought with it an unprecedented surge in public awareness and viewership. The very thing the league sought for decades was, at last, within its grasp. Simultaneously, there has been a protracted campaign for enhanced financial compensation, a deeply held belief among players that they have been historically undervalued. And again, with the advent of figures like Caitlin Clark, the economic landscape began to shift. Owners perceiving a tangible pathway to significant revenue generation, a clear indication of dollar signs, began to demonstrate a marked willingness to compromise. Consider the concrete proposals that have been laid before the players: million-dollar contracts for maximum salaried individuals, average salaries surpassing $500,000, and minimum salaries reaching $250,000. These figures represent a substantial, arguably transformative increase in player earnings. Yet despite these demonstrable concessions and the clear intent to elevate compensation, a segment of the players appears to remain unyielding, seemingly convinced of their entitlement to an even greater share. This persistent conviction, it is argued, has been unduly influenced by a vocal faction of old guard fans, whose rhetoric has, in effect, fostered a pervasive sense of aggrieved entitlement. The undeniable truth, from this perspective, is that if the WNBA were to falter, if its momentum were to dissipate, the primary culpability would rest squarely with the players themselves. Their unwavering ego, coupled with what is characterized as an obstinate refusal to engage in good faith negotiations, is perceived as the critical impedance, and the current state of affairs only underscores this tension. We recently received confirmation of a significant development. The WNBA and the Women's National Basketball Players Association have formally agreed to a moratorium on all league business. This is not merely a procedural announcement. It is a direct consequence of the inability of both parties to successfully conclude a new collective bargaining agreement or even extend the previous one by the stipulated deadline. The negotiations, which persist amidst what has been openly described as a bitter impasse, are ostensibly aimed at forging a transformative deal, a framework intended to redefine the league's economic future. However, despite this shared aspiration, the two sides remain fundamentally divergent on several critical fronts. Chief among these points of contention is the precise structure and implementation of a revenue-sharing system. Is the bitterness, however, genuinely reciprocal? On the owner's side, it is suggested perhaps not. There is a strong contention that the owners perceive their current proposals as exceeding expectations, as going above and beyond reasonable concessions. To transition from a 9% revenue-sharing model to a 15% model represents a significant jump. Yet the players' counter-demand, seeking a staggering 30% of revenue before expenses, is viewed by ownership as fundamentally unreasonable, indeed absolutely nuts. From the owner's perspective, what grounds exist for their bitterness beyond the stark financial reality of having operated at a loss for a quarter century? While the sustained financial drain is undoubtedly a source of frustration, there remains demonstrably a willingness to engage, to negotiate, to find a path forward. The bitterness, it is argued, resides predominantly on the player's side, rooted in a perceived sense of entitlement to earnings that, in the owner's view, have yet to be genuinely earned. This animosity, this perceived sense of grievance, is not universal among the player base, but it is acutely present among those influential figures within the negotiating rooms, individuals such as Breanna Stewart and Aja Collier. Indeed, it has been posited with a degree of critical observation that such players might even view the potential collapse of the WNBA as an advantageous outcome. The reasoning as presented is that rival ventures, such as Unrivaled, could then absorb these athletes, potentially expanding into a 5-on-5 format, a future already being envisioned by some. This sentiment is underscored by recent remarks from Breanna Stewart, who earlier this past weekend openly expressed the profound challenge of compartmentalizing her professional life, lamenting the arduous juggle of games, emails, phone calls, and various commitments. The implication from this critical viewpoint was clear: a veiled suggestion that the league's non-existence might simplify her professional burden. Such a perspective, if accurately interpreted, reflects a profound detachment from the collective well-being of the league itself. With the expiration of the previous collective bargaining agreement, the league has entered a period designated as status quo, meaning the operational conditions and contractual frameworks of the former agreement remain temporarily in effect. Last week, WNBA front offices were instructed to prepare the issuance of qualifying offers and core designations, all under the terms of the now expired agreement. However, there was a widespread and entirely rational expectation that players would exhibit a considerable reluctance to sign contracts under the old system, particularly with the looming prospect of a new agreement promising substantial increases in compensation. Consequently, almost every veteran and free agent throughout the offseason chose to defer signing, awaiting the outcome of these crucial negotiations. The current moratorium, therefore, serves a critical function. It temporarily halts these initial phases of free agency, preventing teams from issuing qualifying offers and core designations to players under the now outdated terms. But why perpetuate this agonizing cycle of negotiation and impasse? Why not, in a moment of radical strategic clarity, simply embark upon a completely fresh start? The proposal is unequivocal: tear down the existing structure and rebuild. Imagine the scenario: direct communication with the league's most incandescent talents. Call Caitlin Clark saying, "Hey, Cece, we're moving forward. Do you want to be the inaugural player of our revitalized WNBA?" Extend the same invitation to Sophie Cunningham. "Hey, Sophie, join us. You can be one of our foundational athletes." What legal and administrative steps would be required to enact such a profound structural overhaul? The question, though audacious, is posed with sincere conviction. And critically, from the perspective of public reception, the answer is striking. The fans, particularly those whose engagement genuinely moves the needle for the league, would not express concern. The fervent supporters who contributed to the Indiana Fever's unprecedented sellout crowds would remain steadfast. The more than 1.5 million new followers and viewers who flocked to the league with Caitlin Clark's arrival would, it is argued, be entirely unperturbed by such a radical shift. At this very moment, a significant portion of the fan base expresses a weary exasperation, articulating sentiments such as, "Just lock them out," "End this nonsense," or even, "Shut this league down." The discourse has devolved to a point where the ongoing bargaining process is viewed less as a sophisticated negotiation and more as a chaotic pile-up on the roadside, attracting gawkers not for its inherent significance, but for the spectacle of its disarray. There's a curiosity, yes, but not a deeply invested interest. The palpable reality is that the league is in danger of losing its hard-won momentum. Its vibrant energy, so dramatically amplified by Caitlin Clark's entry, is dissipating. If, upon Clark's arrival, interest levels surged to unprecedented heights, they are now perceived to be plummeting with alarming velocity, threatening to fall off the screen entirely. The current dynamic suggests a distressing truth. Public interest has become almost exclusively tethered to the presence of Caitlin Clark. The broader narrative of the WNBA, its diverse range of talent and compelling storylines, is being overshadowed. Peripheral ventures like Unrivaled and even the established benchmarks of professional basketball like the playoffs and finals are failing to capture significant public attention. The historical ratings, often cited as proof of progress, are viewed from this critical stance as inflated, lacking the genuine, broad-based engagement that translates into sustained growth. The stark contrast between viewership for Caitlin Clark's games or the Indiana Fever's matchups and all other league contests provides a sobering illustration of this phenomenon. Therefore, the inescapable conclusion is that the league's recent loss of momentum is attributable in its entirety to the players. Their unyielding stance, their demonstrated unwillingness to compromise, and their perceived intransigence are identified as the root causes. The owners in this assessment have fulfilled their obligations, presenting viable and forward-thinking proposals. Consequently, the only logical recourse from this perspective is to proceed without the old guard. Employ whatever legal expertise is necessary to facilitate this fundamental shift and execute it decisively. If such a transformative action is not undertaken, then it is argued the league should simply cease operations, sparing the public the ongoing song and dance of interminable and unproductive negotiations. This entire unfolding saga, the very essence of this intricate negotiation, marks a moment of profound significance. It is a truly wild development, laying bare the stark contrast between two fundamentally different strategic outlooks. The league's recent strategic maneuver, while perhaps not immediately leading to a flurry of signed contracts, is, in its strategic depth, a remarkably astute gambit. Let us not for a moment underestimate the intelligence and strategic acumen of the league's front office. They are not naive. They fully comprehend that the players are unlikely to readily sign qualifying offers under the outdated terms. However, the true understated brilliance of this tactic resides in its psychological impact. It forces the players to confront, in tangible terms, the financial realities of their situation. It compels them to genuinely contemplate their monetary futures and the direction they wish their careers to take. This subtle yet powerful pressure initiates a personal, introspective calculation of risk versus reward, a direct confrontation with the palpable, life-altering financial benefits they are currently poised to reject. And let us be unequivocally candid about the current state of the WNBA as a professional product. The casual suggestion, often floated, of merely implementing a 3-week off-season before resuming play is, frankly, a profound detachment from the league's operational realities. For a professional sports organization that, despite its recent surge in popularity, still exhibits significant growing pains in its overall presentation and operational professionalism, every moment of off-season time is invaluable. I have, on numerous occasions, highlighted the often Bush League quality of some of these telecasts. The experience of tuning into some Atlanta Dream game and it's like, am I watching single-A rookie baseball with the quality of this broadcast? Is a sentiment echoed by a disconcertingly large number of viewers. There are fundamental, structural issues ranging from inconsistent production values and marketing to logistical challenges that this league needs as much time to get together and do professionally as possible. A truncated off-season, a period of prolonged labor strife, or a work stoppage would not only undermine the substantial financial gains being offered, but would also severely impede the crucial, painstaking developmental steps necessary for the WNBA to truly establish itself as a top-tier professional sports league, deserving of sustained national and international attention. The choice, therefore, is laid bare for all to see. The money is there, tangible and substantial, unprecedented in the league's history. The league's future, vibrant and brimming with untapped potential, is waiting to be seized. Yet, the current trajectory, driven by what appears to be a profound misreading of both economic reality and public sentiment, threatens to squander this truly unprecedented moment. It leaves us, as observers and analysts, to ponder the ultimate incalculable price of this deepening discord. The clock is ticking, the rhetoric is escalating, and the public, once largely sympathetic, is becoming increasingly alienated. The future of the WNBA now stands at a truly critical juncture, suspended precariously between the immense promise offered by its surging popularity and the very real, self-inflicted threat of a work stoppage. The decisions made in the coming days and weeks will not merely shape the terms of the next collective bargaining agreement, they will, in all probability, determine the very longevity and fundamental viability of the league itself. It is a moment that demands not just passion and advocacy, but profound wisdom, a quality that at this particular stage appears to be in dangerously short supply from one side of the negotiating table. Tell me what you think. Peace, I'm out. Till next time. Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.